Have you ever been driving down the highway, just trying to get through the day, when suddenly a brand new pickup truck appears right in front of you? You know the kind. Chrome everywhere. Paint so clean it looks like it's never seen dust. Leather seats inside that probably cost more than your monthly rent. For a brief moment, your brain does the math on its own. That truck must cost more than my house. Or at least, more than everything I've managed to save in a year. And then a strange thought quietly slips in. What if the person driving that truck actually makes less money than you do? That's the thought that really unsettles you, quietly, but deeply. Because this isn't a celebrity. Not a tech founder. Not a lottery winner. It's just a regular person, heading home after work. Stuck in the same traffic as you. Stopping at the same grocery store as you. Paying the same painfully high gas prices as you. And yet, they're sitting behind the wheel of a $70,000 decision. That's where the contradiction begins to show. Everywhere you look, people talk about how expensive life has become. Groceries cost more. Rent keeps climbing. Everything feels tighter than it used to. And yet, parking lots are still full of brand new pickup trucks and SUVs. Vehicles that cost more than the average household makes in a year. Monthly payments that quietly rival rent. So the question here isn't really about cars. The real question is this. How are regular people able to afford vehicles like this, while feeling constantly stressed about money at the same time? Are they secretly doing better than everyone else? Did they figure out something the rest of us missed? Or is something else happening beneath the surface? Something that looks like success from the outside, but feels very different on the inside? And that question is where this story truly begins. If you look more closely at the person driving that truck, you'll notice something interesting. They're not millionaires. They're not wildly successful entrepreneurs. They're not people who got lucky with crypto or risky investments. Most of the time, they're people you recognize. A math teacher at the local school. A nurse heading home after a long shift. An office worker stuck in traffic on the same route you take every day. Or a mechanic, hands still smelling of oil, stopping by the grocery store to pick up dinner. They have steady jobs. Livable incomes. Not low, but not comfortably high either. And yet, the vehicle they're driving costs more than what they earn in an entire year. What's strange is that if you sit down and talk with them long enough, you start hearing very familiar sentences. Groceries are getting ridiculously expensive. Our utility bill was crazy this month. I don't know how we work so hard and still never seem to get ahead. Those complaints sound a lot like things you've said. Or things you've heard friends, neighbors, or coworkers say. None of them feel wealthy. If anything, many feel constantly on edge. One unexpected bill, one car repair, one small surprise expense is enough to cause stress for an entire week. And yet, every morning, they climb into that brand new vehicle. They make a large payment every single month. They stay in that cycle, year after year. From the outside, the picture looks impressive. A big vehicle. A polished appearance. It looks like someone who's doing just fine. But from inside their life, the picture looks very different. These are people who carefully calculate every trip, hesitate before eating out, postpone vacations, or quietly tell themselves, maybe next year. Not because they're reckless with money everywhere else, but because a large portion of their income has already been claimed. And what makes this story so common is that it isn't rare. This isn't a handful of people making bad decisions. It's a way of living that's become normal. Very ordinary people, with very ordinary jobs, somehow making the numbers look like they work. At least on paper. These aren't crypto millionaires. They're regular people with regular jobs, who somehow made the numbers look like they work. And once you start to see that, an uncomfortable question begins to form. Am I walking down the same path? Is there a decision in my own life that looks fine on the surface, but quietly applies pressure every single month? That question doesn't need to be answered right away. But once it appears, it's very hard to ignore. And from here, we need to talk about a belief that many people carry. A belief that sounds reasonable, but quietly leads them far away from real financial security. There's a reason this story repeats itself in so many households. Not because people lack discipline. Not because they're obsessed with cars. But because they believe things that sound perfectly logical and are quietly wrong. The first belief sounds like this: my income has gone up. I can afford it now. Sound familiar? Income has gone up, yes. But slowly. Incrementally. Meanwhile, vehicle prices have jumped. Monthly payments have risen much faster than wages. The problem is that our brains don't compare total cost. We focus only on the monthly number. And as long as we can make it work this month, we convince ourselves that everything is fine. The second mistaken belief: a car is a necessity. Yes, transportation is necessary for work, family, and daily life. But not every car is a necessity. There's a massive gap between reliable transportation and a vehicle that costs an entire year of income. And that gap is usually filled with emotion, not logic. The third belief, and the most dangerous one, is this: as long as I can make the monthly payment, it's okay. This is where things begin to slide. When buying a car, almost every conversation revolves around one question: how much can you afford per month? No one asks, how much will this cost you over 7 years? What percentage of your income is this? What opportunities will this quietly take away? And that's how numbers that sound reasonable begin to appear. The average new car payment in the US now exceeds $700 a month. For pickup trucks and SUVs, the most popular choices, payments commonly fall between $900 and $1,200. Not for 2 or 3 years, but for 7 or 8. 7 to 8 years, every single month. Meanwhile, most household incomes haven't increased anywhere near that pace. The fourth mistaken belief: 0% APR is free money. It sounds irresistible. Borrowing without interest. But there is no such thing as a free lunch. That cost is built into the price of the vehicle. You either pay more upfront, or you get a discount and pay interest, but not both. And those 0% offers usually go to people with perfect credit. The same people who didn't need long loans in the first place. The final belief: trading in makes it easier. It sounds clever. Trade the old car, roll it into the new one, add a little to the monthly payment. But in many cases, it's just moving old debt into a longer, more expensive contract. The shortfall from the previous car doesn't disappear. It gets wrapped up and quietly added to the next loan. When you put all of this together, a strange feeling appears. Not guilt, not panic, but a quiet, clear realization. Something is wrong with how I've been taught to think about cars. Not because you did something wrong, but because you were taught to look in the wrong place. And once you start to see that, the question stops being, can I afford this? It becomes, is this decision moving me toward freedom? Or quietly locking my future into place, month by month? That's the first, aha, moment. And it's also the point where we need to look deeper at how an entire system was designed to make these choices feel completely normal. There's a truth that's uncomfortable to say, but necessary to understand. Most people aren't truly affording these vehicles. They're reorganizing their entire lives to serve them. It sounds extreme, but look closely. When a car payment takes up a large portion of monthly income, everything else has to adjust. Housing, food, travel, savings, long-term plans. Everything begins to orbit one fixed number: the payment due at the beginning of the month. This is where extended loan terms enter the picture. A 3 or 4 year loan feels heavy. Stretch it to 7 or 8 years, and the monthly number suddenly feels manageable. But what's the cost? The total amount paid skyrockets. You're paying for an asset that loses value every day, while the debt stretches across nearly a decade. Eventually, you realize you owe more than the car is worth. That's negative equity, a common condition that rarely gets discussed openly. Once you're there, you can't sell. You can't trade. You can't escape. Unless you're willing to write a check. And that's how the loop begins. The old car isn't paid off. The debt gets rolled into a new one. The loan gets longer. The balance gets larger. You no longer own the car. The car owns you. But what makes this system work so well isn't just the math. It's how the car is sold. Cars are no longer marketed as transportation. No one tells you, this vehicle gets you from point A to point B. Instead, they sell an image, a lifestyle, a feeling of success, a better version of yourself. The car becomes part of your identity. And once identity enters the equation, logic is usually the first thing to leave. That's when people begin making strange sacrifices. Simpler meals than necessary. Postponed experiences. No vacations, or guilt when taking one. Some people borrow from their future. They tap retirement accounts early. They lean on credit cards. Or take second jobs. Just to pay for the car they bought to enjoy life. There's a painful paradox here. The vehicle is purchased to signal success. Yet it quietly erodes the financial foundation that actually creates success. And then there's the part almost no one wants to calculate. Take a simple example. A $55,000 vehicle. Financed over 7 years. At a common interest rate. When you add everything up. Payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance. The total easily exceeds $130,000 over 7 years. 7 years later, you're left with a vehicle worth maybe $15,000. If you're lucky. $130,000. For $15,000 in value. That's not transportation. That's wealth destruction. Wrapped in leather seats and heated steering wheels. Now, set that number aside for a moment. If that same monthly amount had been invested quietly into a simple index fund, consistently, without noise or flash, after 7 years, you wouldn't just avoid debt. You'd actually build real wealth. The difference isn't income. It's direction. One path builds wealth. The other slowly erodes it. And this system exists. Not because people are foolish. But because it's designed to look completely normal. Seeing that doesn't make you less successful. It gives you a new map. A different way to see money. And the quiet choices we make each month. And once you've seen that map, it's very hard to look at a car as a harmless purchase ever again. After everything we've talked about, you might start looking at the cars around you differently. The next time you see a massive truck drive by, one that costs more than your house, pause for a moment. Remember that the person inside may not be living as comfortably as it appears. They might be carefully rationing meals, postponing important plans, eating cereal for dinner tonight. Not because they like it, but because a payment is due. That doesn't make them lesser. It simply reminds us that appearances rarely tell the full story. In a world where success is measured by what's visible, choosing a quieter path can be an act of courage. Maybe the car in your driveway isn't new, isn't flashy, doesn't turn heads. But if it lets you sleep peacefully at night, say yes to meaningful experiences, and build a future without monthly pressure, then maybe it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Quiet wealth isn't loud. It doesn't need to impress. It doesn't need to prove anything. It just needs to be strong enough that you don't worry when the bills arrive. And if calm, realistic conversations like this help you see money more clearly, without pressure or judgment, you can consider subscribing. This channel isn't about getting rich fast. It doesn't promise shortcuts. It's simply about avoiding expensive mistakes, so that your wealth can grow slowly, quietly, and sustainably.